Well, this is an interview with Dr. C. Tucker Weston, who served as president of the State Association during 1975 and 76. The interview is being conducted by Dr. Laurie Brown and Ms. Monya Green. We're in Dr. Weston's office in Columbia on December 11th, 1992. And the first thing I'm going to ask Dr. Weston is a little bit about your family of origin, where you were born, etc.
Well, I was born on May the 24th in 1919 in Lower Richland County, just below what is now McIntyre Air Base, which is 18 miles out in the country. And my father was a farmer, and we were raised on the farm until the age of 16. I left home and went to the Citadel, graduated the Citadel in 1939 at the age of 20. And in those days, the finances were real tight, so I tried to get a job with a Citadel diploma. And our first job was $10 a week packing books at Brian's warehouse after graduation of Citadel. Then I got a raise to $12 a week, and eventually, the 1st of January 1940, I went to work for $15 a week with the state newspaper, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, putting papers out. In the meanwhile, I was trying to get to medical school, and fortunately, I had an uncle and aunt who were instrumental in loaning me the money to get to medical school. So I was able to get into medical school in 1940. And the classes that eventually ended up going around the year with the war going on. Our first year at medical school, we had 9 months, and then we had a 3 months vacation. And after going back in September that year, we only had 2 weeks intervals before we went through, so we eventually graduated from medical school on December the 22nd of 1943, which was a very good Christmas present.
I bet it was.
At that time, it was snowing, ice in Charleston, and everybody was frozen over. Coldest weather we'd had down there in a long time. So that's kind of in a nutshell my background.
Well, now, where did your parents come from? Do you know what?
Well,
where they originated?
The Weston family originated in England and Wales, and they came over in the early years. My great-grandfather was injured in the Confederate War, and my grandfather at the age of 11 had to take over his family to help live after the war. And then my mother's side of the family was named Hopkins, and my grandfather, my father's mother, my mother's father, graduated from the University of Virginia, and he was a medical doctor, but he was a gentleman farmer. He never practiced medicine anymore than just taking care of his immediate vicinity of people living around him. And then my mother's brother was a medical doctor, and he finished down in Charleston in 1925 and came to Columbia and eventually specialized in orthopedic surgery. And so from the time I was about the 5th grade, I wanted to be a doctor, and my ambition was to return and go into practice with my uncle, Theodore J. Hopkins, which I eventually did.
Which you did?
Yeah.
Well, that was nice. Now, how did you like Citadel?
Well,
anything in particular go on there that
I think it was the
greatest, tell me about?
Greatest experience in my life. I was a little country boy, 16 years old, and my family put my first cousin and I on the train at Hopkins, which is just below Columbia here on the Southern Railway Carolina Special. And we put us in a steamer trunk with all our belongings and shipped us off to the big city of Charleston. And we got down there about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, scared to death. When we got on the train, all the train cars were full of upperclassmen from the Citadel, and we were scared to get out of our seat. So then we finally got to the Citadel after getting a taxi from the railroad station. They told us to go up there. And we said, "Where's up there?" They said, "Room so-and-so." and nobody showed us anything. We were scared to death, but we finally found a room. He had one room and I had another. So the sandwiches and chicken that we brought with us, we hadn't eaten them on the train because we were scared to death of all those upperclassmen. So we got in the room and took a toothbrush and jammed the door so nobody could get in, and then opened up our supper about 11 or 12 o'clock at night. But it was a great experience, and I think it was one of the greatest things that I've gone through in my life, the 4 years at the Southern. I've been proud of that background ever since.
Now, when did you get married, Tucker? Were you after medical school?
In medical school, they took us in the service and made us. I got an ROTC commission from the Citadel, which was a second lieutenant in the artillery. And then when I got in medical school, I transferred to the medical administrative corps. And then they took us in and made us privates our senior year in medical school. And at the time, I didn't have to borrow any more money to go to the last 6 months in medical school, and we were going to get $60 a month or $90 a month or whatever it was. So we decided to get married. So we got married on June the 23rd of 1943, 6 months before I graduated from medical school. And my wife was Polly Hankel from Charleston, and she had just graduated from college in Charleston the 1st of June of that year. And so we lived on Mill Street between St. Francis Infirmary and the classroom. And I was also working as a junior intern at St. Francis my senior year in medical school.
Well, did y'all have any children while you were in the service, or?
Well,
tell me just a little bit about your family now.
When we moved, when I graduated in December of '43, we came to Columbia and served a 9 months internship and a 9 months residency, surgical residency at Old Columbia Hospital. And while we were there, we had our first daughter in 1944, and we went into service in July the 5th of 1945, and this was the tail end of the war, so we did not get overseas. And I ended up at Carlisle Barracks, Pennsylvania, and then went from there to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and served on the orthopedic service at Fort Leonard Wood. And we closed that fort up, and on Mother's Day of 1944, we moved to Minneapolis, and we were stationed at Fort Snelling. And we closed Fort Snelling up in the fall of 1944. And we got out of the Army no, I'm wrong. I went in the Army in 1945. And we went to Carlisle Barracks. And 46, I was at Fort Leonard Wood until Mother's Day of 46. Then we went to Fort Snelling, Minnesota. And then we got out of the Army in February of 1947 and returned to Columbia. And at the time we returned to Columbia, we just had the one daughter. But after that, we had 2 more daughters and 2 sons. So we had a total of 5 children. And the oldest daughter was the one that was with us in Minnesota. She was killed in an automobile accident when she was 16 in 1960. So we now still have 2 daughters and 2 sons and 5 grandchildren. And 2 of the sons are in Columbia, and 1 daughter's at Hilton Head with 2 little boys, and 1 daughter's in New Orleans, and she's got a 15-year-old son. And I don't have any male western grandchildren yet.
Well, now, getting back just a little bit, when you were in college and medical school, or even in the Army, would any of the professors have any particular bearing on what you were thinking about doing, or in particular influence in your life?
Well, I think Dr. Cyril Driscoll, I think he was an influence on everybody. And he was a Citadel graduate, and when we went to interview him to get in medical school, he had a sign that interviews limited to 10 minutes, but you were lucky to get out in 2 hours. But anyhow, I think he had a great deal of influence in teaching us anatomy with Dr. Lassie. And then Dr. Johnson in sophomore year, we're teaching clinical pathology. I think he had a lot of influence on Coach old Dr. Parker with his definitions of water in his chemistry course. He was a real character in medical school. One of I guess one of the greatest influences I had was Tom Pitts was the one that let me get to medical school. So he was chairman of the board of trustees, and I had to interview him before I got in medical school.
Well, Dr. Wyman told me, I believe, that Dr. Driscoll was the admissions committee.
He was,
he
was the admissions committee.
The committee.
And his office was just as messy as mine is.
And it stayed that way until the day I finished.
That's right.
He had anatomy with him.
But the tragedy of Dr. Driscoll was that when he retired, he really never had really made any financial resources to live off.
Nothing to live on.
And he contributed so much to medicine with his dedication in teaching anatomy.
Now, when you came to Columbia and opened your practice with orthopedics, how did you happen to get into organized medicine then? What?
Well, the first thing I did when I got home in 1947, in February the 10th of 47, I joined Dr. Theodore Hopkins, who was my uncle. And he had a little office on Marion Street right across from the Baptist Hospital. It's about as big as, twice as big as this room we were in, with 3 little rooms. And he was practicing orthopedic and traumatic surgeon, represented the railroads and Pacific Hills and whatnot. And I had planned on coming in with him since I was a little boy. And so first thing I did when I got to town was to pay my liability insurance, which cost me $25, and join the medical society. They put it up. And at that time we had to join the medical society to be a member of the staff of the hospital. So I was eager to get involved to get on staff of the hospitals. So then I got involved with the Sertoma Club in 1950 because I realized that as a doctor I wasn't seeing anybody but doctors working in socially and extracurricular. So I became involved in civic club work, and that opened my eyes to what that you need to be a member of the community. And after going through the art chairs in the civic club, I felt like that I should try to turn my talent to trying to help to better the medical profession and organized medicine in South Carolina.
And then you went right on and became active in the state association.
Well, I became a delegate, and then Bill Perry was president. He advanced the idea that we should have a speaker of the House of Delegates because it was such a burden on the president to try to do everything. And so I became the first speaker for the South Carolina House of Delegates. And then I was vice president under Joel Wyman. Before that, I'd been vice president, and then I became a speaker. And from there, I went on to become the president-elect and the president.
And that's interesting because you have contributed so much to the association. Now, what do you remember some of the issues when you were Speaker of the House, say, and when
well,
you
the great issue
organized?
One of the great issues we started out with was the Blue Cross Blue Shield relationship, and we had many a hot session at the state convention on that. And I remember on one occasion that we were debating the issue, and our member from Columbia, Harry Metropole, wouldn't quit talking. And I had to get behind him and forcefully make him sit down because he was going to make us lose our point if he kept talking. And that was one of the great issues. And of course, the liability insurance developed into a great issue, and it crystallized at the time I came in as president. And that was one of the major problems that we had in my year as president, is trying to meet the problems of the liability insurance. In the year before, Dr. Don Kilgore from Greenville was president, and he and I had gone. No, he wasn't president. He and I were committed, and we went to Washington for a committee hearing chaired by Ted Kennedy, the senator. And Ted Kennedy, it was on liability insurance, and Ted introduced the subject and left the meeting and turned it over to a young green behind the ears doctor who was quite a liberal in wanting to socialize medicine. And we spent 2 days up there going through that, and when we came back to South Carolina, and I became president, St. Paul Insurance Company withdrew their coverage as of July the 1st, and I was elected president the 1st of May. And my first problem was to go to the State Insurance Commission and ask him to activate the JUA. And so he activated the JUA, and we activated it on July the 1st of 1975. And that became our primary insurance carrier. At that time, it was just a limit of $150,000, I believe. And during the whole year that I was president, we were working on permanent coverage. And eventually, we presented bills to the legislature, and they were passed, and we got the JUA as it stands today, and the PCF. And the JUA's limitation is $100,000 coverage, and the PCF is everything over $100,000 with no limit. And we're still operating under that system today, and we have some 2,500 or 3,000 people that are insured under that program now. And we have been very successful in that protection for the liability coverage for the South Carolina physician.
And the JUA and PCF, what specifically are they?
They are the liability insurance carriers for our physicians and healthcare providers. This means that nurse anesthetists and chiropractors and even some of the trustees on the boards of the hospitals are identified as healthcare providers. And for any successful suit against any of these providers, the JUA provides up to $100,000 coverage. And when the coverage goes with the verdict is above $100,000, then the PCF has to come in. And Don Kilgore and I were involved in this to start, and we were on the committee it was a statewide committee of legislators and citizens and doctors and whatnot that came up with the final version of the JUA and the PCF. And we've been involved with it ever since. Don Kilgore and I are still serving on the Patient Compensation Fund. And we have Dr. Evans from Spartanburg, who's the third doctor on that fund. And I'm the chairman of the Operations Committee and the vice chairman of that committee. And the State Insurance Commission is the chairman. So most of the time I'm the one involved with calling the meeting all. We're well covered in the black, and we're better off than any other carrier in the country.
Well, that's great. And these bills were introduced into the legislature while you were president, weren't they?
And they were passed and activated immediately. Mm-hmm. The PCF followed the JUA by a year. And then one of the other great things that we were concerned about in the years up to the time I became president, for years our senior doctors in Columbia who had been active in medical affairs had tried to move the state headquarters from Florence to Columbia, and they said it couldn't be done. And we said, you young whippersnappers will never get it accomplished. Well, we had a historic meeting down in Santee with the council, and we prevailed, and we passed the motion to move the headquarters to Columbia. And previously to that, I had been anxious to get a headquarters building, and I was trying to get the Columbia Medical Society to get a building, but I couldn't get that through the Columbia Medical Society. So we moved the headquarters to Columbia. Jack Meadows was the director, and we replaced him with Charlie Johnson. And Howard Stokes was the treasurer. And all the bills had gone out that year from Florence with Howard Stokes as the treasurer. And Jack Meadows had put them all in the bank in Florence, and we had the headquarters in Columbia and no money. The money was in the bank, and it took us some little maneuver to
Maneuver.
get that money moved to Columbia. Well, we finally got it moved to Columbia. So we rented a headquarters building on Washington Street in Columbia and worked for a while. And then I was anxious to have a headquarters building, so they ended up with me as chairman of the committee. And eventually we got through, we had an assessment through the association and built the building adjacent to the Richmond Memorial Hospital. And we had the dedication while I was president, and Jim Simons was the executive vice president of A&A. He came down for the dedication. And we had a headquarters building. Since that time, at the headquarters building, we had an offer to buy the building, and we ended up selling the building for $1,300,000, paying off all the debts on it. And we had enough money left over to buy the headquarters building that we're now in out off of I-26, just above St. Andrews Road, above I-20 there. And we have a debt-free home office, which I feel like was a great accomplishment.
You think assessing us to help move that headquarters here and to get a new building was worth it, huh?
I think, well, I don't want to disparage the people that have gone way before us, but I feel like we really, when we moved the headquarters to Columbia and developed this building and the program, that we really got to organize South Carolina Medical Association on a firm footing to really work to help the citizens and the doctors of South Carolina.
I think that was a real accomplishment. Now, what else can you tell me about your term as president? Anything else you can think of that we ought to go over? I know you did all kind of things. You were interested in the image of society.
I was quite interested. One of my great concerns while I was president was to try to get the average practice physician to realize that the South Carolina Medical Association is him, that he's an integral part of the association, and that he should take part in all of its activities and should be a member. And this is one of the hardest things for me to accept, the fact that so many doctors don't want to join the South Carolina Medical Association. And I was very hopeful that we'd get the committees with active working membership so that everybody could bring in their ideas to form a consensus or a coalescence of opinion so we could move the Medical Association forward. I think we've done that to some degree, but we have never really accomplished completely, because there are probably 800 doctors in Columbia, and maybe 400 of them are members of the Medical Association. So that's one of the enigmas of time.
It's always a problem.
And I think that all of us that are involved in the leadership roles get criticized by the fellows that are practicing and not in being involved, that we are interested in running the show or something, and that we ought to be back in our offices practicing medicine. But I feel like that the only way to get ahead in this fight that we've got with the government and all the entities that we're involved in, that we ought to have a well-organized medical association so that we can maintain our proper position.
What do you see today as the main issue facing medicine?
I think that we're faced with more and more regulations, that we're going to have more and more petty things that involve us that just completely irritate you from time to time. There's a red plastic trash basket that we have to put needles in every room in the office. If you put a cap on a needle, now it's a $5,000 fine. You've got to put that needle in there, and you have to pay $5 to buy the thing, and then another $25 to have it hauled off. And these type of things are just getting worse and worse all the time, and I'm afraid the new administration is going to make them worse and worse. Besides all of the problems of the Medicare and Medicaid and all the government regulations in handling that. I've had to completely rework my office billing system. Instead of treating a patient for something and giving them a shot or something, you've got to charge for the needle, you got to charge for the syringe, you got to charge for the medicine, and instead of one item on the bill, you've got to put 5 or 6, and which is requiring more paperwork, more time. And the major problem that I feel like is that the hospitals are going to end up controlling the practice of medicine. More and more of them are building office buildings adjacent to the hospitals and expecting those doctors to put their patients in the hospitals. And more of them are going to end up with the hospitals really dictating the practice of medicine. So I'm kind of glad that I'm on the outgoing side and not that freshman doctor starting out at 27 years old or 30 years old.
Well, yeah, I guess you're still a little bit optimistic about medicine, though, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. There's no question. I think that American medicine is the best medical technology in the world, and that the big problem that we face from a general standpoint is that we're paying so much for all these specialized things, such as heart transplants or kidney transplants, and that much money being involved in treating one patient when so many other people are not getting full coverage in their medical care.
Well, what do you think the future of medicine is really now?
I think we're going to become more and more technical. That I think that the newer doctors are losing the personal contact with patients that the older ones of us have, that the patients are being treated more as a number or a machine rather than having the personal, confidential relationship that we have enjoyed over the years. I think that's one of the greatest satisfaction of practicing medicine, is to be able to sit and talk to a patient and let them complain and tell you what's wrong with them, and what you get an insight into what their family situation is, and all these things that help for their general welfare, that you're able to do more for them. And I have old ladies come in here. I had one old lady come in here, says, I went to that young whippersnapper over yonder by the Lexington Hospital, and he spent 2 hours and put me through all of these tests. But when I started talking to him, he told me I had 5 minutes and let him do the talking. And says he might be smart, but I'll never put my foot in his office again. And I think that's a bad trend.
That is hard to teach in medical school or anywhere else, but I think only by example probably is the...
That's right. I think it's only by example, and these people are coming out without that contact and having the example like we used to have with our peers when we came out to practice.
Now, you're still practicing full time?
I'm still practicing full time, and I've had total hip on my left hip, and I've had corneal transplants and cataract removed and lens implants. So I did not go into the microscopic surgery, arthroscopic and those type things. And since I've gotten to this age, I have quit doing any major surgery. So in the last couple of years, I only do minor things, but I'm still seeing patients full time in my office.
Now you have other interests as well as medicine, I believe.
Yeah, a few of them.
A few other interests.
Yeah.
A few other interests. I think you're sort of active still in your alma mater down in Charleston, aren't you?
I've been a dedicated Citadel alumnus, I guess you'd say, all my life. I have served on all the committees and boards and everything that I could serve on. I've been the president of the Brigadier Club, which is the athletic club, and I've chartered the Citadel Development Foundation in 1960, and we now have $72 million in that, which I'm very proud of. And this is helping the Citadel to be one of the preeminent educational institutions in the South. And I've been on the board of visitors, the president of the Alumni Association, all those kind of things, and still actively keep up with what's going on down there. When I got through with the other thing I got into, as I told you earlier, in 1950, I became a member of Sertoma. So I got involved with that. December of '50, I was in Kansas City on a committee for the national organization. In '51, I was on the national board of directors. In '59, '60, I was president. So I traveled all over the country, and that was a great experience. And I've got friends all over the country, in Canada, and the United States, and Mexico. And when I got out of that, I got into the medical association and then ended up as a delegate to the AMA, so I've got doctor friends all over the United States too.
Now, when you were a delegate, Tucker, was a lot of controversy about anything in the association at that time?
Well, yeah, I was president when we went out to Honolulu. They had a big discussion about reorganization of the AMA, which was accomplished and is running the same fashion now, with the president and the president-elect and the board of trustees and the councils. And the councils are councils of the AMA, not councils of the House of Delegates or councils of the board. But the thing that impressed me, years ago I was in Washington and went to a hearing in the Senate, and the AMA had representatives at this hearing, and these fellows were old 70s, it looked like in the 70s and 80s, and I was concerned that they weren't energetic enough to really represent the AMA. And then after I got there as a delegate and found out how it operated, and those old fellows were gone, and we had new people there that were really dedicated in doing the job. But I was impressed with the fact that any of us, you or me, or anybody else, can go to the AMA convention right now and testify before the committee, and your voice will be heard, and it'll go all the way through channels, through the House of Delegates, and if your idea is well taken, it's become a policy for the AMA. So I think it's a very democratic organization, and I'm very supportive, and I just wish every doctor would join the AMA.
Well, what is your status in the state association now?
I don't know. I'm a senior citizen.
There's two of us.
I got an invitation to go to the Columbia Medical Society annual ball at Gratis 2 days ago, since I'm a senior citizen.
All right.
So I'm on the what do you call it? Senior citizen, senior fellows, or whatever they call it. I don't know. But anyhow, I still try to keep up with what's going on, and I see Walter Roberts and the members that are involved in Columbia. Yeah, we kind of keep up with what's going on with them.
Well, I'm a little disappointed that you didn't have on a red coat today, a red jacket, because for about 10 or 12 years in the state association, that was your trademark.
That's right.
That was before everybody else showed up one meeting with red jackets on.
That's right. No, I don't know why I didn't. I don't believe. I don't know why I got on brown. My wife just put this one out for me to wear today.
That's why you have it on.
Yeah.
But you certainly keep busy in all your civic activities and with the Citadel and everything. I tell you, those are hobbies as well as
That's right.
Obligations.
I have liked to hunt on occasion, but I haven't had time to do much. I don't play golf, and I haven't had to do much hunting because I've been involved with Sertoma in the civic field, and I've been involved with the Republican Party. I was president of the state Republican convention for 20 years with our friend Ford McKeever and John Hawke and all of them, and then the Citadel. Those are the three things besides the medical association that I've been involved with.
Well, one thing in the medical association, you were in SOCPAC, the Political Action Committee.
Yeah, I was in the original supporter of SOCPAC back when Harrison Peoples originally was started. I think Harrison was the first chairman, and I've been very active in the SOCPAC, and I have been active in keeping in touch with the legislative congressional folks such as Floyd Spence and Strom Thurmond over the years.
Now, I was going to ask you, during your time as president, when you were getting these bills into the legislature, were there any people who were particularly friends in the legislature, or
well,
that you want to mention?
We had a legislator named Billy Reel from Edgefield, who is no longer there. He was on that committee, and he was helpful in getting that bill through. But in general, I can't remember any specific ones now. It's been so long since it's hard to remember the details after 17, 18 years. But I remember Billy Reel was one of them, and the Judge Jim Stevens from Spartanburg, he was a senator at the time he was on it. And right offhand, I can't think of any other particular legislators. But I'm also in favor of that Doctor of the Day program that we operate, and I try to participate in that every year.
When did that begin?
Father Pope pushed that, and we always been going on now for 12, 15 years, and it's been very successful. And when you, I don't know whether you've served down there,
yes,
but you know how easy it is to get to talk to the representatives and the senators and all. And I think that it's been a great public relations effort from the Medical Association. They always take pride. They see you come in the door and they're rushing over to see which one of them can introduce you.
Right. Now, do you have any other comment about your time in the association, or anything that you want to mention during your presidency?
Well, I kind of look back on it with a feeling of pride and satisfaction that we were able to move the association from Florence to Columbia and to get it on a firm financial basis and a service organization that is helping the medical profession. Recently, we brought in the fact that the association can serve as the secretary and treasurers of the various specialty groups and keep the books for them and have everything centralized, and that helps to get all the disparate organizations under one roof to think and work together. And so I think we've made a great deal of progress, and I just hope that we will continue to do so. And the big concern I have is that in any organization like this, if you don't have strong voluntary leadership, the professional staff will take it over and run it, and the first thing you know, you don't know what's going on. And I think that this is the thing that, and I have preached this to those that have followed, that they need to keep a strong hand and keep full knowledge of all the activities, and let them set the policy and the administration activate the policy and carry it through. And I'm real proud of the fact that we got the permanent building without any debt on it, which will last us for many years.
Now let me drop back just a moment to medical school again. Didn't some of your classmates become real active in the association?
I think we're probably the only class that I know of that had 3 presidents in it. I was president, and Wade Stein was chairman of the council, and he followed Desi Gillen as president 2 years after me. And then Uta Colvin, who was our high mark man, he made the highest grade of our class in medical school, and he came in as president 3 or 4 years later. So we've got 3 of us that are past presidents that are from the class of December of 1943. And now we're all looking forward to the golden graduation ceremony at the medical college in May. So they've already written us and told us to make plans for this.
Good.
So we're lining up to do that.
That's my 40th, so I'm not too far behind you.
And then we've got Martha Dukes Yow that the Alumni Association gave the award to last year, and she's been the editor of the clinical magazine for infectious diseases, and she's one of our prominent alumni. And of course, Manly Stallworth and Fraser Wilson and all that crowd in Charleston, Louis D. Smith, the Greek Harrison, Arthur Williams.
Yeah.
So we've got a good representation of that class that stayed in Charleston.
Well, now let me ask you one more thing. And looking back over your career and everything, and looking back over your time in the medical associations and what you've done, would you do it all over again?
I would do it all over again. I wouldn't change it. And it's very rewarding to have been involved with these things and felt like that I've been able to do some small contribution to the joint effort of many people. And this has been, I think it's much better to work in the way that I have than it is to try to concentrate on building up a big bank account and not serving the public, because I think we all should serve mankind in whatever capacity that we are trained to do. And I think that this is one of the things that we'd have a much better world today if we would serve our mankind.
I think that's what medicine's all about.
And that's what we're doing, and we're for the benefit. And medicine is to benefit the patient and to restore them to a good quality of life and rehabilitate them to be able to carry on a successful, whatever occupation they might be working.
Well, now, if there's nothing else that you might want to add.
I can't think of anything else. As
I
I said before, it's hard to remember 17 years ago what went on.
Well. So I guess we'll conclude our interview, and on behalf of the State Association and on my behalf and all the doctors before and after us.
Well, I want to thank the medical profession for giving me the opportunity to serve. It's been a great experience.
Dr. Weston, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.